Hi, everyone. Welcome to ThoughtBreak. This is a unique YouTube channel show which is focused on mid and senior executives and actually everyone, entrepreneurs and homemakers who want to take a break from your regular thought, have a cup of coffee with us, and talk about life, talk about your career journey. And more interestingly, hear some very senior executives in the industry on their journey and what has made them what they are today. So I wanted to show today ThoughtBreak Ashok Gupta. Mr. Ashok Gupta has been an illustrious self-made man who has had a long journey of last 25 years and more, where he started off with an engineering degree and an MBA, and you can read his profile, as part of the ThoughtBreak script. But more importantly, he is someone who has been a professional like any one of us. And over time, he moved from his professional career to set up his own organization and is managing director and founder of Tyre Experts based out of India. Ashok, a very warm welcome to the Thought Show today. And I'm sure we can look at your advice and tips. I've had a pre-chat with you. I believe you're quite a straight shooter. You like straight questions, so we will try to keep it short and simple. And this is a 15-minute show end of the day. So how do you feel? And welcome again.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It's great to be on the show, and I'm honored that I have been. I'm one of the people that you've chosen to be one of the speakers to share my experiences. I think it's a great thing you're doing, and yeah, like you said, we keep it straight and crisp.
Great, Ashok. Thank you. So my first question to you, Ashok, is you had a great journey, and somewhere in your journey you broke away from a really good professional career, which was outside India as well as in India, and went over to do your own gig. And I'm sure it's not easy, to make that switch. So a little bit on what made you change and get into the new journey.
I think, like everybody else, I started out working for large organizations and switching jobs every 2, 3, 4 years. Also did my master's in business administration after a couple of years. And all the companies that I worked with, very esteemed, reputed organizations, large in India or multinationals. Of course, they all have their own culture, they all have their own setting, and they teach you a lot, right? And you also learn a lot about what you could do if you did not have the shackles of being bound down by a very large corporate. They have their systems, they have their policies, they have their own way of doing things, and sometimes the inertia is just so tremendous that it's hard for you to bring about a relevant change. And even if you're able to bring about, I'm not sure if it's very sustainable over a period of time. So you may have excellent thoughts. You may want to do things differently as the market changes, as the dynamics change, as the business environment changes. Sometimes you may have the power to do it. Sometimes you may be able to reach out to the people who are in the power, or who have the power to do it or influence the decision-making process. But it's a very, very long and winding road, right? So if you want to cut through the clutter and you think that there is something that you can do on your own, put your ideas to work, give something more to the market than is being given currently, and build an organization of your choice. So I believed that when I'm going to start my organization and when I'm going to build a culture and a value system, not doing things which can upset people is going to be of prime importance. If you can not be in the good books, at least don't be in the bad books, right?
But Ashok, let me come in here. That's not an easy ask, right? Because you have to do things which are right, and sometimes you will step on toes. I mean, that happens to us when we are part of organization as well, right? You may be doing a great job, and as part of the great job, you may end up having a conflict of interest with someone else as a team, or you may end up stepping on someone else's toes. Same in the business side or on the entrepreneurial spirit, you will end up annoying someone. I mean, it can't be like everyone is happy with you.
Yes, I think in large organizations, given the rigidity of the structure, given the preference for going through layers and layers and a chain of command and a chain of communication, it's bound to happen. Also, when people are under pressure, uh, and many times people within the organization will play one against the other, which is very typical, right? I've seen it all the time. You've seen it. I think everybody sees that. And I think that's where the culture and the value system comes in, right? As a captain of the ship, or even a supervisor of a particular department, right, or a division, I cannot ever point a finger to anybody else who's reporting to me saying that you don't do a good job or your person is not doing a good job. Well, it's ultimately my responsibility, right? So I need to make sure that I am developing a team which is coherent, which is cohesive, which has a sense of purpose. Just like I am being trusted with any job that is given to me, I in turn need to place my trust in somebody else's hand to deliver. And similarly, that person needs to trust that everybody else is doing their job towards the same goal.
Got
So
it. Got it.
having a common goal, having a sense of purpose, which is coming right from the top, and everybody driving towards the same thing is of key importance. Yes, there will be conflicts. It's our job to manage that conflict part. It's not a question of one upmanship here. You know, I do better than you do better than me. Well, we are both bound to be shot by a third person someday, right? So
Yeah.
it should not get into our heads as a fear factor or as a cutthroat rivalry.
Tell me something. You obviously transitioned from a very good career, with companies which were very well-known companies in your domain, and you set this up. They were definitely you would have some cold feet. It wouldn't have been an easy journey. What are the triggers? Two questions here within the question. One, what are the triggers which made you really think about doing something different? What is important here to understand is that getting to this point, there would have been something going on in your mind, some fears, because what you are today is a good 15 years of work of your own organization, and before that, about 10 years of your professional career. But
Mhm.
cut back 15 years, uh, let me wind you back to your memory lane to your ninth year of your professional career, let's say, eighth year of your professional career. Did you start thinking around that time that something needs to be done? Was something not going right? You want to do something different? What was playing in your mind? What are the storms playing in your mind?
I think that's a very relevant question. Um, yeah, so working for blue chip companies, having a good position and a fantastic career, which were all important at that point of time. But that was also the time that my children were growing up. I needed more family time. Attend a open house for my children, go for the annual function, pick up my daughter and take her for a piano class, or do something which is family oriented. And that was also the time where you have more and more pressure as a division head, as a business head, to deliver not just on your targets, but also on your team collectively, right? There is more and more being asked from you. And there came a time where I literally got into confrontation with my director, and he somehow felt that the job wasn't important, and I had to give him a retort saying that, well, uh, my family is the most important thing for me. I am here because of them. If it wasn't for them, well, I would be a free bird. I could do whatever I want to do, but I have responsibilities that I need to take care of, right? And if I can't do that in my own time, if I have to compromise every single time, I'm going to give up a large part of what makes me what I am. And I'm simply not ready to do that.
And what
I
were
need,
the, and thanks for being very authentic here. I really appreciate it, Ashok. What, when you say compromise, like balancing away like long hours at work, or is it
yeah,
not? I don't think you're afraid of long hours, but is it more to do with, not having the right amount of productivity coming out of the kind of work you're putting in, and it's just for the sake of doing and putting in long hours. Just comment a little more on that.
Yeah. So, of course, long hours were a direct result of the amount of time it took to arrive at a decision to do something. What could be achieved in 6 hours would typically take 10 hours in the company. Just because people would drag their feet, multiple levels of approval, distrust, essentially. That's when you need multiple approvals, right?
Yeah.
So it was just pure inefficiency. It was just pure a cultural thing in the company, which was driving me up against the wall. There was no way I could have changed that because I was not in the position to do that, right? So the only thing I could do is cut the chains, cut and break loose, right? Do something of my own where I can be more efficient. I can build a team with more trust. And then also not have the pressure which is exerted in the wrong way. If I'm given the resources, I have my targets, and I have a free hand in decision making, I will deliver. But you got to trust me. If you keep peering over my shoulder, what's going on, and keep asking me questions which is going to slow me down, it's not going to work. Trust is paramount.
So there are, I'm sure a lot of people who are hearing the show, there are a lot of people out there who do have micromanagers, as we call it, right? Who do have people looking down their shoulder. And it's not really productive sometimes. You end up probably spending 9 hours for a 30-minute meeting versus you could have actually put that into, and a 30-minute meeting was with a global customer you're going to engage for a X million dollar contract or a X million rupees contract. I think that's still worth it. But that 30 minutes is just to make sure that you're putting a presentation for someone to understand what it is about. I'm not sure the teams really enjoy that because they come under pressure on the reverse side of having spent that time building a presentation for someone who's a top executive in the organization, and then they have little time left to do their own stuff. And therefore that ends up, I think I'm trying to relate what you're saying there, that's ended up to adding extra hours to the day, not that they were inefficient in the first place. So they're both kind of teams, they are unproductive teams, but usually people, the frustration and the lack of connection to the organization comes from when the teams are being less productive, not because of they have not been good at it, at the work, not that they're specialists, or not that they are not knowledgeable, but they have just not enough time to do what they initially and originally meant to do. What were the initial fears which played on your mind in the first 2 to 3 years of you setting up your own firm? And did you have also moments of challenge? I've done something wrong. I should just go back and, maybe into the job.
Yes, I think there is. I think it's with me. It was a question of more of uncertainty, and it was more a question of how do you manage the uncertainty part, given the nature of the business that I was getting into, right? It's a very pertinent question that you asked me because the basis on which I started my business never fructified for the next 10 years. Very interesting.
Wow.
But eventually 4 or 5 years back, I got into the same line of business. But it took me 10 years to actually get into it. So I started off thinking of something and I actually ended up doing something else. And I think it was within 18 months of my starting my business came the subprime mortgage crisis, and then 9-10 was probably the worst time of our lives, especially people in business like me, where the demand just dried up, the money wasn't coming in, and we had huge bad debts. So massive setbacks, right? Not just in my UAE operation, but also
crisis of 2008-9. I remember it was a huge crisis. Yeah.
Yes. I basically went back to 2006 when I started my business. I was back to ground zero. Down, but not out, right? Beaten, but not, taken out completely. It gave me a great learning that there is going to be uncertainty in business. There will always be something which is going to make you go back, right? It could be your fears. They could be founded, unfounded. It could be coming from your parents, like my father would sometimes call and say, well, do you think you should probably go back and pick up a job? Or even my sister would call and say the same thing. And every single point it was, no, I have chosen this and I'm going to make it a success, no matter what it takes, right? I think I was fortunate that I took some decisions on hindsight. It's easy for me to say they were the right decisions, but at the time I took them, they were very, very tough decisions. I cut my company cost 40% within 2 months of the economic crisis of 2008-9. People said I was overreacting. I said, you know what? I will conserve my dry powder. I need to come out fighting on top when things get better, right? It played me in very good stead. Same thing when it happened now, 5 months back. I cut my company cost by 15% in March, within a week of the lockdown, right?
Awesome. Awesome.
And I never considered retrenchment. I did consider once, do I need to give a salary cut? And I said, no, the numbers don't make sense. I will just upset more people. If I can afford it, I will do it, right? Everybody has stood by me, knowing everyone is going through the same pain and the same crisis, and we're all on the same page, right? So I think this is going to be a recurring phenomenon, right? It happened 10 years ago. It's happening again today. It's going to happen again in future. From which side are you going to be ambushed? Which part of you is going to come under threat? We have no clue. All we know is the more distant the future, the more uncertain it becomes. And we just need to gear up to handle those uncertain times. And I think that's where the value system and the culture comes in extremely handy. Another interesting point that I would just like to mention here, we are a very small trading company, right? But we went fully digital 4 years ago. So when this pandemic hit and everybody is forced to work from home, no challenge at all. Everything is on the cloud. Everything, people are used to working on the cloud for the last 3 years, 4 years, right? So we came out on tops.
Super.
Right? So
I feel, Ashok, that, sorry to interrupt you, but you made something very, you said something very interesting there. There are organizations which are large organizations, medium scale, and small organizations which have gone through a very tough time in the last 6 to 7 months. And it seemed like this is a long tunnel which is probably not even visible where the light is going to show up sometimes, and both from employer and employee perspective, And I recently wrote an article on that exactly. And one interesting thing someone called me up to say is that there are some organizations which have been so focused on managing their cost and bottom line that the first place they went was to shave off the people cost. And however, there's some progressive organizations which understand, and I think whatever your scale might be, Ashok, I'm very pleased to hear, and congratulations to you for taking that call, that the value system of the organization speaks for itself, that the place you went was not to shave off the people cost by retrenching people only, but look at other measures to get to that place.